Hi, this is Alexandra coming at you live from my own kitchen. What I'm going to be doing tonight is making the alkaline soup that I've mentioned a few times in my blog. For anybody who's having a little stomach issues, maybe a little heartburn, this should help you. Other people who just want a nice healthy meal, this is a great idea as well. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so you can see some of the fresh ingredients that I've got that I'm going to go ahead and cut up. And then I'll go ahead and make it and take you through that process. My prep area over here, and I'm going to take you through some of the ingredients that I'll be using. Right here is my Dutch oven. This is what I'm going to cook everything in. I like the way it cooks everything evenly, so I like using that. As far as the vegetables we're going to be using, we've got some Brussels sprouts that are right here. I've got about 7 or 8 of them. I quarter them, or sometimes I cut them in half if I get nice small ones, and it works well for the soup. Sometimes I find if I buy too much of each thing, I've made enough soup for an army, and between my husband and myself, we don't need an army full, even though we are tall people. I've got some ginger here. This is very alkaline, and it gives the broth a delicious flavor. I have some crooked neck squash. I've got about a dozen baby carrots over here. I already had those, so I'm going to go ahead and use them. They are organic. I do recommend buying organic whenever you can, just so you don't get the pesticides. Especially when you're pregnant, you have to make sure no matter what, you've washed everything well, so make sure you're doing that. I have some purple potatoes. I have some flat leaf kale over here. I really like the way that this cooks up. It still has a little bit of crunch even when it's in the soup, which is nice. I have some anise right here. This leaves a really delicious flavor in the broth. If you've ever had pho, you'll notice this is in the broth and it does give it a nice flavor. This is some parsley. Parsley is very alkaline, and I like using some fresh herbs. I also will be using some dried herbs, but again, I like to do some fresh as well. One thing you can't get fresh are garbanzo beans, so I've bought these. I got organic here. I do, again, recommend getting organic. We've got some vegetable stock. Whenever I can find this organic, I do get it there. I couldn't find any today, so of course I'll deal with what I can. It is all natural, so that is good as well. And then I have my Young Living lemon oil. You can either use real lemon, or I like to use this. It's fun to cook with your oils, and this is a fun way you can do it. Hi everybody, I'm back. I've now put on my apron that says Kiss the Cook. I have all my vegetables cut up back there, and I'm officially barefoot and pregnant in my kitchen. What we're going to do now is assemble the soup. What I have here is my oil that I'm going to use. It's avocado oil. I recommend using this over olive oil because olive oil is pretty acidic. So I like using avocado. It has a good flavor. It cooks well. It cooks on higher heat. So that's really nice as well. I've had my pot here warming up, so it's all ready to go. I'm going to put in about a tablespoon or 2 of oil in there. I like to just eyeball it and cover the bottom of my pan. Then we're going to next add in the anise that I have. I've just loosely chopped it up. I've done a little bit of julienne on some of it. And you can hear it sizzling here. We're just going to go ahead and get it going till it gets about clear. Kind of like you would do with your onions, but we're not using onions because onions are very acidic and we don't want to upset our stomach. So we're using this anise. Again, it has a wonderful flavor. I love it. Okay. If you notice it's getting a little hot, just adjust your pan. And you notice I'm not adding any spices yet. We're not going to add them in for a little bit. This is actually a pretty quick meal, especially after you've gotten everything cut up. You just kind of throw it all in. It's a soup, so it's going to sit here and simmer. One of the nice things as well, if for some reason you didn't wash your vegetables quite good enough, you're going to get your soup up to a temperature that is going to kill off any bacteria. So that's the good news there as well. Okay, I think this is pretty good to go. So next, what I've got in my bowl here is I have my carrots, I have my potatoes, and I have my Brussels sprouts. And these are all just kind of cut up loosely, like you can see here, enough so you can fit it in your spoon when you eat. You don't want things that are cut too big that aren't going to fit in your spoon, because then it gets a little frustrating to eat your soup. So I'm just going to add all of these in. Just try to brown them a little bit. So I might turn my heat back up just a little bit for this portion. helping to get the flavor out of these. Here it's sizzling there. Smells so good in here. I wish you guys could smell it. Now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt. I haven't done any of that yet, as you could see. And I like to cook with kosher salt because it's a little bit harder to over salt with this, and the flavor ends up being a little bit better. I know when you're pregnant they say to use iodized salt, so use whatever you want. This is just what I personally prefer. Okay, how I measure it out is I just do about this much in my hand. It's probably about a teaspoon. And that's my initial salting because I want to help release the flavors of my food, and this will help do that. I'm not going to put any pepper in yet or any other herbs. Okay, we're going to mix it around. You might feel some of your stuff start to stick to the bottom of your pan. That's good. That's them browning. I'm getting some that are flying. My food's wild. Woo! Okay. Sounding good. Everything's looking good in here. Okay. Next, what I've got in here is the crooked neck squash. Again, I cut it up just the same. I have it in little chunks that are good to fit on your spoon, and I'm going to dump those in. That's the technical term, dump. Okay, we'll stir these around. Again, releasing those flavors. That's what we're doing when we have this heat up. I've got it, my dial on mine goes to about 10, and I've got my temperature right now at about a 7. And that's what I like to cook on when I'm trying to brown my vegetables. You do it too high, you might start to burn them. You don't want to do that. So especially in the beginning, I'll start at about a 7. If it's too hot, I go down to 5. Then right now I've brought it back up to a 7. Okay, this is excellent color I'm seeing on this. If I had a cameraman, I would have him pan in right now so you guys could see this. All right, next, I'm gonna go ahead and add in my kale. I wanna start trying to wilt it a little bit before we put the liquid in there. So I'm going to put this in. And then kind of to help that process, what I like to do is I'll add a little bit of my vegetable stock in. I add just about a 1/4 cup, just to kind of cover it. I'm gonna turn my heat down to about 5, and I'm going to grab my lid over here, and I'm gonna put my lid on so it kind of steams it a bit, okay? None of your other vegetables in there are gonna burn or anything like that while this is going on. And now while this is happening, I'm gonna move some of these things out of the way. I had not chopped my parsley yet. I was waiting for that. I like to put it in more towards the end when it's nice. Everything's nice and in there, and it adds, again, it's when you're flavoring stuff. So I washed it, and I kind of have it like this. I just take a little bit off the top here. Sorry, you can't see me very well. I'm a lefty, but I try to keep myself open to you. So I've got kind of a good chunk, if you can see. It's about, if I took 2 hands and went like this, it's about that. And I'm gonna go ahead and just loosely chop it up. Nothing too crazy. Just get it going there. Okay, and I'm gonna leave it right there. Also, what I still have over here, while my kale's steaming, is I have my ginger. What I've done is I've sliced the skin off of my ginger, and I'm gonna use my flat plane to grate some of it in there, and it'll give it a really nice flavor. It helps release the juices in this. I still have my garbanzo beans over here, and I'm gonna put those in after I've added all the liquid. These don't really need to cook much, so it's not like I need to brown them or anything like that. And I still have my lemon that we'll be adding in. I also grabbed a couple of herbs. I grabbed some rosemary and I grabbed some thyme. I'll be putting about a teaspoon of those into my hands And what I like to do when I add them in is I put it in the palm of my hand and then I crush it. And it gives it a lot more flavor, and you really get that aromatic part of the herb when you do it that way. Okay, I think we've steamed the kale enough. Take the lid off, put it back over here, out of my way. And perfect, yeah. So what has happened is my kale has just started to steam. It's a little bit more maneuverable, so I can mix it around with the other vegetables. There's a little bit of liquid in there. There's not too much. Okay. Oops, I'm losing kale again. The pot never seems to be quite big enough. No matter how big of one I use, I always end up putting too many vegetables in there. Okay, at this point I'm going to go ahead and start doing my seasoning. So now I've done about a quarter size of salt in my hand. It's more than a teaspoon. And I like to just shake it around. I can kind of see when I've coated the top of the vegetables and it has a nice little layer of salt, that's probably good. I don't want to do too much because you can always add more salt when it's done and salt it to taste. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some pepper. I like to get the pepper in the pepper grinders because it does add a lot more flavor. I just normally give it about a dozen cranks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You know, let's give it 2 more for good measure. Okay. Now we're going to add in that thyme. Like I said, about a teaspoon into your hand. And then you just crush it and it releases those flavors. It smells really good. And I'm going to do the same with the rosemary. And it's just the same amount of both. Okay. Now we're also going to add in the parsley. Just scoop it up in your hands. Like I said, it's about 2 scoops, so it's perfect when you do that. And now I'm going to use my flat planer. If any of you have ever used one, it's like this. Very handy little tool. And I'm going to do, what I did was I cut off about, it's kind of almost like a thumb size of my ginger. So I'm going to do most of this. Maybe not quite all of it because I don't want to grate my finger because that would really hurt. But I'm going to do most of it. It takes a little while. Bum, 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 ba-da. Bum, 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 bum. We'll get there. It's kind of nice when you use this too. It leaves a lot of that fiber that gets a little stuck in your teeth. It leaves it behind and just lets all the juices and all the part of the ginger that you really want in your soup. Okay, whoops. I've done enough. I don't want to grate my finger here. And now I'm going to go ahead and add in the stock. So I have a 32 ounce thing of it, and I just usually do the stock I eyeball it. Sometimes, depending on how many veggies I've put in, it takes 1. Sometimes it takes 2. Sometimes it takes 1.5. We'll see what it does today. So I did 1, and that's definitely not enough. And I use unsalted vegetable stock because, again, you don't want to over salt in the beginning. It's a lot better to just add your own salt as you go, and you can do it to taste. You know, I think this one is going to take up my 2. I like that. Okay, looking good. I'm going to give it a little mix. The stock has a nice rich color and it has a nice rich taste. So if for some reason you think that the taste of the stock is a little too strong, you can add some water. That is perfectly fine. I like to leave it as is because I like a little bit of a richer tasting soup. So do what you want. Okay, now we're going to add these garbanzo beans in. Just one can usually does the trick. Stir it around. And lastly, we're going to add our Young Living lemon. I like to do just a drop or two because it's so concentrated. It's a lot more than going and squeezing half a lemon or a lemon in there. So you really want to use this liberally. Start with one or two. If for some reason you want more lemon in yours in the end, you can add another drop. Okay, now the best part, I'm gonna do a little tasting. I didn't really use the best spoon to taste, but let's find something else. Oh, a little soup ladle, this will be fun. Oh, excellent flavor. Okay, so now I'm gonna turn my heat up again. I'm gonna bring all of this up to a boil. So I'm gonna put it between 8 and 9. I don't want to get too overly aggressive and put it all the way up. So I'm going to leave the lid off now. I'm going to bring it up to a boil. Once it starts to boil, I'm going to bring it down to between 3 and 4, and I'm going to let it simmer there for about 20 minutes and then go ahead and serve it up. So once I'm all done, I will show you the finished product. Hey everybody, I'm back and my soup is done. I have gone ahead and placed it in a bowl right here so you can see how lovely this turned out. I can't wait to eat it. I also went ahead while I was waiting for this to finish cooking. I made some paninis to go along with it that are in the background there. So the next time maybe I'll go over some paninis that you can do with it. Sometimes I know those might be a little more fattening than you want, but I was a good girl and I worked out today, so I'm gonna enjoy it with my soup. Thank you everybody for joining me and making my alkaline soup. I hope you enjoy this recipe.